This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of September 22nd, 2024. Content authenticity statement: 100% of this week's newsletter was generated by me, the human. You will see AI usage and inputs in the video section of the newsletter as I demo how to build an AI agent. The big plug: I've been on the road a ton, and I've got 2 brand new talks that are at the top of the newsletter that I've never done before until recently. The first is from MACON, the Marketing AI Conference. I did a 40-minute talk on why open models are your answer to data privacy and generative AI. And the second, which is fresh off the presses, is a 90-minute masterclass from Inbound 2024 on how to build a data-driven customer journey map using generative AI. And I'm especially proud of that one because the night before the talk, I looked at my slides, I looked at all the conversations I was seeing online and things, and I just threw the entire thing away, which apologies to Adrian and the team. That probably gave you some indigestion. But instead, I said, we're going to do the entire thing from scratch live. And the feedback I got was very, very positive. People wanted to see how to do the thing and not just talk about the thing. So what's on my mind this week? AI Agents 101. This week, let's do a deep dive into AI agents. You've heard a lot about these recently from companies like Salesforce and HubSpot and all the things that AI agents can supposedly do, all the power of AI they will allegedly unlock. How much of the talk is hype versus real, and how will you get started on your AI agent journey? Part 1. What is an AI agent? Let's start with the basics, the bare basics. What is an agent? An agent is infrastructure around an AI model that lets the model communicate with the world around it. Think of an AI model like OpenAI's o1 or GPT-4o or Google Gemini 1.5 Pro or Mistral Nemo or Claude Sonnet 3.5, etc. You can tell all these models were not named by marketers. An AI model is like the engine of a car. It's incredibly powerful. Comes in a bunch of different sizes for different applications, very capable. Some engines you're allowed to modify, do a little hot rodding and stuff. Those would be open models, and others, not so much. Go watch the talk from MACON if you want to know the difference between open and closed models. A model is the heart of AI. These things, these pieces of software, cost millions of dollars and millions of hours to make by training them on crazy amounts of data. Whether or not the model maker has permission to use that data is a separate topic. But you never use an AI model directly. In the same way that Microsoft Word is a piece of software written by humans for human use, AI models are pieces of software written by AI for AI use. They're basically a big pile of statistics. We use models through an interface of some kind, something like ChatGPT or Claude or Poe, or within a service or other pieces of software like Slack or Salesforce or Adobe Photoshop. These interfaces are essentially the rest of the car, right? The seats, the wheels, the windshield, the gas tank, etc. All the parts that you want in a car, right? You never, ever drive down the road sitting on an engine block, right? You drive down the road in a car or a truck or something that is a conveyance. And like a car, a consumer interface like ChatGPT does nothing without us to drive it. Open up ChatGPT, stare at the empty screen, and it will not do anything. It won't take action on its own. Just like my Toyota Prius in the driveway doesn't go anywhere without me getting in and turning it on. Right? Go to Google Gemini, go to any AI model's interface, and it just sits there. Suppose we wanted our vehicle to do something on its own. We would need a self-driving car or self-driving something, right? Some kind of autonomous vehicle, one that had instructions for what to do, one that could drive itself. That is what an agent is. It's a different kind of infrastructure around an AI model, one that has greater autonomy to perform a specific task. Think about an agent like a self-driving vehicle with a specific purpose. For example, a commuter electric vehicle. It's not a pickup truck, right? A pickup truck is not a commercial tractor or a plow. You would not drive a John Deere X9 1100 industrial combine to work. You shouldn't anyway, unless you work on a farm. You're certainly not going to drive it to your office job in downtown Boston. Nor should you attempt to plow or harvest a field with a Prius. Right? The Prius engine might be able to do some light plowing, but the rest of the vehicle is completely unsuitable for doing farm work, for harvesting grains. Right tool for the right job. In the same way, while an agent has a very powerful generative AI model at its heart, it still has all this clearly defined infrastructure around it that guides its purpose. And that infrastructure dictates what it should be used for. What kind of infrastructure? Well, an AI agent's infrastructure looks a lot like any other app. That's the secret. Agents are apps. There might be connectors to external data sources, talking to APIs upstream, like your CRM or your databases or other services or other information sources. There's likely code, middleware that performs specific tasks in a sequence. That code will talk to an AI model of some kind. And then when results come back from the model, there'll be more code to send those results somewhere else, to do something with them. For example, an AI agent might download weather data from the National Weather Service, process that data, turn it into a weather forecast, and then send that weather forecast maybe to your inbox. Like, here's the weather for tomorrow. Finally, there's going to be some kind of scheduler or triggering mechanism that will tell the agent to do its thing, that will launch that autonomous sequence of things to do. I'll give you an example of an AI agent I built. I built an agent to score blog posts. The agent's components are a Python script written in the programming language Python that I use generative AI to write. So I'm not a particularly good Python coder, but generative AI is. It grabs URLs from an RSS feed from a blog and extracts the main page content from each page and stores it in a SQLite database. There's then an R script, a second piece of code, that talks to the data in the database and takes each blog post one by one and feeds it into an AI model, a generative language model, along with the Trust Insights ideal customer profile. And there's a big bunch of prompts. Basically, it's prompting for me. The prompts are hard-coded into the script. That same script then gets the response back from the model, which is a score of how well aligned our blog post is to our ideal customer profile's interests. And then it stores that back in the database, and then it turns into a bar graph of the scores over time so that I can see the performance of my blog over time in terms of how well it appeals to our ideal customer profile. Now, this agent is manually triggered, but once it's written, it's something that can just run. It could do its thing without my intervention. I could have it run every week, every month, etc. This agent can't do anything except this task, but it does this task really, really well. Again, if this sounds like an app, it is. AI agent is just fancy, expensive consulting language for a self-driving app. Self-driving app, that's what an AI agent is. Part 2, why do we care about AI agents? The reality is that consumer tools like ChatGPT, they scale really poorly despite OpenAI's best efforts. You can and should have things like a prompt library where you share and improve your prompts, but ChatGPT still requires a human to operate it. And if you want that to scale as is, you've got a lot of people copying and pasting the same prompt. That's incredibly inefficient. What if you wanted to take a high-performing prompt or a really important prompt, like writing a monthly report for your client, and have a machine do that task autonomously, instead of you having to download the data, clean the data, copy, paste it into whatever, pass it to a model, copy, paste it back out, paste it into a slide deck? You would have an agent perform that sequence of repetitive, predictable tasks instead. Agents are a natural evolution. The most repetitive generative AI tasks, where you have clearly defined processes, clearly defined outcomes that are as predictable as the sun coming up or the phases of the moon. That part, the repetitive part, is critical. Agents are best suited for repetitive tasks with predictable outcomes, where minimal human supervision is needed. Language models give us far more flexibility than traditional agents. Anyone who's ever used an old school chatbot on a website knows how little flexibility the past generation of agents had. But agents are still best suited for tasks with clear outcomes. It is, as companies like Chevrolet of Watsonville found out, a poor use case for an open-ended chatbot, for example, to run on your website where People can have conversations about anything. Amazon found this out the hard way with their AI reviews, where you can just type in arbitrary code and their language model executes it. That is a security risk, and it's expensive, right? Having ungoverned agents just kind of doing the, whatever, expensive and dangerous. You want agents to be focused. You want apps to be focused. There is no one app that does everything. There is a word processor and a spreadsheet and so on and so forth. How do you know what's a great task for an agent? Here's a simple benchmark. If you use generative AI in a system interface like ChatGPT, and you're just copy pasting prompts and then copy pasting outputs with very little thinking or very little review needed, you've got a task that is ideally suited for an agent. That SWOT analysis you run quarterly, where you just copy paste the client data, upload some files, copy paste the prompt, and then copy paste the results into a slide deck, that is 100% an agent task that can and should run autonomously. The final product should just appear in your inbox. The example earlier, scoring blog posts, doing that one at a time, copy pasting 1,400 posts in, and then copy pasting the results out. Giant waste of time for a person to do that. Having AI do that with the help of code around the AI, perfect use case to unlock the power of AI at scale. And that is what agents do. Agents help us scale AI. A lot of people think AI agents are just chatbots in the same way they think of ChatGPT as just a blog post writing tool. Yes, they can do that, but using it just for that purpose is like taking a Harrier to the grocery store. Yes, it can do that, but it is capable of so much more. What are some common AI agent use cases? Well, it depends on the industry. In marketing, there can be things like shopping assistants, price optimization agents, consumer-facing chatbots, customer service agents. Here's an easy rule of thumb. If it's a valuable prompt today that you use, that you copy paste, it's an agent tomorrow. Someone will wire up the necessary infrastructure to turn that high-performing prompt into a self-driving app. Part 3, what does the agent ecosystem look like? As we have seen and heard at major conferences and trade shows this fall, everyone and their cousin is rolling out a low-code or no-code agent framework. Salesforce has Agentforce, HubSpot has Agent.ai. There are dedicated platforms like Poe and Character AI, etc., that are low-code or no-code. There are advanced heavy code platforms like Google Vertex, and in the various marketing technology landscapes, there are hundreds more agent vendors, and all of them have the same promise. They promise the same thing: powerful, easy to build, easy to deploy agents. Many of the no-code ecosystems even offer pre-built agents you can simply pick up and use in the same way that you would use any SaaS service, with the same caveats of any SaaS service. You're using somebody else's code. All of the SaaS agent platforms have the exact same purpose: to get you to buy or stay with their platforms by fully automating agent creation and management. In some ways, it's another form of vendor lock-in. Everyone wants you to use their platform to build agents in their ecosystem so that it's harder to leave. Here's the thing. Remember that AI agents are nothing more than self-driving apps. That means that, like AI models themselves, you can build agents entirely within your own ecosystem and infrastructure. If there's a use case for generative AI that you feel is valuable enough to turn into an agent, then there's good reason to consider building that agent in-house as opposed to having it live in a third party's ecosystem. How do you decide whether to buy or build? It comes down to whether or not you have the people, the skills, the infrastructure to support the agent or not. Again, they're just apps. If you already self-host other apps at your company, you could just as easily self-host an AI agent. Part 4, how do you build an AI agent? Chances are you're probably at least 50% of the way there towards your first agent. Let's go through the evolution of an agent. We start with basic generative AI with prompts and tools like Claude and ChatGPT. You use these tools with prompts. This is old hat by now, right? So if let's go, in fact, look at good old Google Gemini or Google AI Studio, right? This is familiar ground. And you might have a prompt, right? Here's a prompt for translating into from one language to another. Over time, you should be systematizing your use of prompts with things like prompt libraries. I pulled this one out of my prompt library. These are stock prompts you've built that create high-performing outcomes. And these prompt libraries are things you share with your team at your company. For example, at Trust Insights, we have a ton of shared prompts in our Google Drive. we can just drop right into Gemini whenever we need to. And because they're nothing more than Google Docs, anyone can edit them and upgrade them. After your prompt library, you might get to a point where you want to turn your prompts into hosted apps using custom GPTs in the Chat GPT ecosystem, or gems in the Gemini system, or artifacts in the Claude system. These apps basically are sophisticated prompts and background information that are designed for a specific task, like writing Google ads or analyzing competitive corporate strategy. They're tuned for that specific purpose. They're not self-driving. A person still has to operate a gem, a GPT, or an artifact, but they're very close to an agent. A user who picks up one of these apps doesn't have to do any prompting. They can just get right to work. It is at this point where you would convert the gem or GPT or artifact into an agent. Instead of you, the human, using the app, you might convert the app into an agent that can retrieve the appropriate data, pass through a generative model, and send the outputs somewhere for other use. How do you do this? Well, it's at this point where you would use a third-party platform or build it yourself. Now, the best way to make that determination is to use the Trust Insights 5P framework. Now, you can get a copy at trustinsights.ai/5P framework. And it's purpose, people, process, platform, performance. And we should define the purpose, people, process, platform, performance of our agent and how it evolves. First, the purpose. What is the agent supposed to do? What outcome should it generate? What problem should it solve? If you're extending the work you've already done with GPTs or gems or artifacts, then you should have a pretty clear idea of what the purpose is of your agent. If you're starting from scratch, take the time to write out some user stories, right? User stories as a persona. I want to sow that as a persona, task, and outcome. Do this. This is requirements gathering, and you would do this for an agent the same as you would for building any kind of app. Second, once you have your robust list of requirements, your purpose, you've got to take a look at your people. Who's going to be using the agent? Is it internal employees? Is it the general public? That's an important thing to know and to document. Equally important is to determine what skills your agent needs. If you've identified that the agent's going to need serious coding, do you have serious coders in-house or people who can use generative AI to generate serious code? If not, then you're probably going to need a third-party platform. Third, you got to look at your current processes, your current AI prompts, and your infrastructure. Do you have specific requirements that you need to meet with your current use of generative AI? Standards for compliance, data privacy, etc. The same standards you use for regular human-driven generative AI will apply even more so to your agent. So if you have to use AI solutions with a certain level of, say, data privacy requirements, that will in turn help you choose your AI agent strategy. You can't reasonably put an agent on a hosted service that doesn't meet the same standards as the models themselves. Once you've done these steps, then you can start evaluating what platform you want your agent to live on. As with all AI, remember that choosing the technology and platform comes last, after you've worked out the requirements for everything else. Finally, you decide how to measure the performance of your agent. At a fundamental level, it obviously has to work, right? So that's pretty easy to measure. Additional KPIs will be determined by your purpose. If your goal is to serve X number of customers, you can measure that and determine if it's working as intended. If privacy is a critical concern, you measure how much data is leaking out of your ecosystem. If marketing is your purpose, you measure marketing activity, like how quickly customers are advancing through your customer journey. Whatever your purpose is, measure it. So, as I said, let's look at how to do this. We're going to start with a prompt. And this is my language translation prompt. I've put a copy of this in the past in our Analytics for Marketers Slack group, if you want to get a copy. Your first step would be to test this thing out to make sure it works. So I'm going to put this in as system instructions. I'm going to choose the latest Gemini model. Actually, I'm going to choose Gemini 1.5 Flash, which is a lighter weight model. I'm going to say our target language is Brazilian Portuguese. Locale is, let's localize it to Rio. Let's take our text. The audience is business readers on LinkedIn. Professional but accessible, warm tone. Text to translate. I'm going to take a part of this newsletter. Just paste this right in. So we're going to test our prompt first. Does this work? So it's going through, it's making 2 different candidates for the text. Is then going to score each candidate, decide what the winning translation is, and then produce the winning translation with its score. So this prompt works pretty well. Well, I think it works pretty well. I'm going to open up the DeepL translation software here and ensure that, yeah, okay, the text the text matches what I put in. So it at least did the translation reasonably well. So that's prompt, right? Prompt in a generative model. Our second step, the evolution, would be to turn it into a gem. Right? So we're going to start a new gem here. We're going to call this, and we're going to take our exact same system instructions and hit save. So now we've gone from fully human-led, where you do everything, to an app. This is not self-driving, but it is an app. So a coworker could use this and be able to get some success with it. Next, if I want to convert this into a full-on agent, I'm going to go to Google's Vertex. Now, you don't have to use Vertex. Use the ecosystem you want. Use Agent.ai, use Character, use Poe, use whoever. It doesn't matter. But it's all is essentially the same thing. Let's create a new agent. We're going to call this language translation agent. Translate text from a source language to a target language. Again, system instructions, same exact thing. And we're going to go ahead and make sure that that looks good. I hit save. And I'm going to take out my language translation agent. We're going to use Gemini 1.5 Flash. And I'm going to copy my prompt from earlier to make sure that it works properly. Source language, US English, document, context, LinkedIn post. Okay, it's having some issues. But you get the general idea. What would you do with this? Well, then after you've done this and you get this agent working properly, you would then connect it to different systems. You might connect it to Slack or to Discord or to WebEx or to Telegram and make it available as a autonomous piece of software that would then go and be available to users. And there's no prompting. There's no going to a special location. It would just appear, for example, in Slack as another coworker in your instance, or it could appear in Google Chat, or it could appear in Discord. Whatever the case is, that would be an example of an agent. There's so many agent ecosystems out there that you can use, but it all starts with building a great prompt, testing it, making sure it operates as a still human-driven app, a gem or a GPT or an artifact, and then converting that into an agent by porting it to an agent ecosystem. Again, if you want to self-host, you can. There's nothing stopping you as long as you have the technical skills and the infrastructure to build that agent within your own ecosystem. That way, you're not, ringing the register, because every time that I use, in this case, the Vertex agent, that hits the Gemini API, and that means Google's getting paid. And it's going to hit my, the bill's going to be on my credit card. So depending on your use case, remember, this is something you did in the requirements gathering. If you're like, yeah, I don't want to spend a gazillion dollars on my agent, then, you might want to self-host it. So to wrap up, AI agents are a natural evolution of our generative AI use cases. If we're already getting benefit from our human-driven AI usage, human-led, getting benefit from our agents is the next logical step in the process. I would add that for minimum frustration and maximum value, you don't want to skip straight to building an agent most of the time. Instead, Think about using the tools like Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT as R&D tools to develop a use case for an agent, prove the concept, iron out the bugs in your prompting, and only then build it as an agent. You will save yourself a tremendous amount of time and headache that way. So that's Agents 101, a deep dive into what these things are and what they do. Remember, they are just self-driving apps. All right. What else happened this week? Well, besides Inbound and all these different shows, I recorded a 5-part series on music and AI with my friend and colleague Ruby King. We recorded it at the Marketing AI conference last week. The initial intent for me was to have it be a session at MACON, but for a variety of reasons, I wasn't able to make that happen. So instead, we recorded this in 5 parts. It was originally just a 90-minute straight through, but it's been broken up. So go check that out. Go check out the AI talks that both Katie and I did at MACON, and go check out the Inbound workshop talk as well. All right, let's take a look at jobs this week. We have AI and Data Analytics Manager at Lionbridge Games, Associate Director of Data Science at Natera, Business Analyst at Magnet, Business Development Manager, Resilient Analytics at Stanley Consultants, Chief Product Officer, CrowdWave, Director of Analytics at Fingerpaint Group, Director of Analytics at Revocent, Director of Business Intelligence at Renaissance Life and Health Insurance Company of America. That's a mouthful. Lead for Marketing Analytics at Gemini, Marketing Data Analytics at Blue Rose Technologies, Personal Finance E-Commerce Editor for Kiplinger, Senior Data Analyst at Insight Global, Vice President of Data Analytics and Decision Support at Pets Best Insurance Services, and VP of Financial Planning at Finital. I think that's how you pronounce that. Yeah, it's been absolutely crazy the last couple weeks. I'm actually going to be at the Women in Construction Operations event this coming week in San Francisco. Then a little while for a breather. Then I'll be at the Marketing Process B2B Forum in Boston. Then Social Media Marketing World and Content Jam. So it's crazy. If you've seen one of my talks recently and you would like to have me bring that talk to your annual kickoff, to your sales meetings, your end of year event, if you've got use it or lose it budget, let me know how we can work some stuff out and figure out how to make that happen. That is going to do it for this week's newsletter. Thank you, as always, for your attention, for being here. I appreciate you, and I will talk to you on the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you want to know when new videos are available, hit the bell button to be notified as soon as new content is live.